welcome to A Sound Constitution here on CHLY 101.7 FM, a show where we focus on health topics important to our community. This year's team is made up of 4 fourth-year VIU nursing students, and our goal is to demystify health issues and address common misconceptions by sharing evidence-informed information from a variety of reliable resources. All information provided on our show will be available on our show notes on our Facebook and Instagram pages. We want to remind our listeners that the information presented in this show is for educational purposes only and does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about what's being discussed, please feel free to reach out to us on Facebook at A Sound Constitution, Instagram at CHLY A Sound Constitution, all one word, Twitter at ASC_VIU, or email us at asoundconstitution@gmail.com. We would like to start our show by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territory of the Nanaimo people, with a broadcasting range that overlaps the Kewatsin and the Sliammon territories. This acknowledgement is done with gratitude to the Nanaimo people and with the intention to increase awareness about truth and reconciliation processes and efforts on Vancouver Island. Additional information and resources surrounding Nanaimo history, reconciliation, protocol, and land acknowledgement can be found on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages. I'm your host, Dana, and I want to welcome you all to a new season here on The Sound Constitution. Over the upcoming months, you're going to hear from myself and my co-hosts, Haben, Cam, and Taylor, talk about important health topics you may have seen in the media or even talked about at home. Today's episode, though, is one that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's food security. Right now, all of us are feeling the squeeze at the supermarkets. Inflation, distribution, transportation disruptions, conflict, the pandemic, it's all putting people into a bind. For some, it may mean having to rethink social eating and eating out with our friends and what type of meals we're going to make. But for others, it becomes much more pronounced and much more dire when they need to choose between food, shelter, or bills. There are those of us in our community that need to decide what meals they can skip in a day, and for others, they are having to start using food banks for the first time. Food security is a core aspect of personal health, so when we are at risk of losing it, we will cause a ripple effect that will affect our total health and well-being in every aspect of our lives. Over the course of today's episode, my co-hosts are going to talk about the connection between food security and our overall wellness, how recent events like the pandemic, conflict, and inflation are affecting access to food, and what resources people can utilize if they are experiencing limited access to food in our community. Also today, I'll be interviewing Abby Sauchuk, the Director of Development at Loaves and Fishes, a food bank and important community pillar here in Nanaimo. We'll be talking about the mission of Loaves and Fishes, what services they offer, and what important information we want the community to know. So stay tuned. Starting our episode today is my co-host Taylor talking about the relation between food security and the social determinants of health.
Hello, it's Taylor. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to be talking a bit about the relation between food insecurity and the social determinants of health, the overall health effects that may be caused by food insecurity, and food security as a sustainable development goal. The World Health Organization describes the social determinants of health as non-medical factors that influence health outcomes. Some examples of these include income and social status, education and literacy, childhood experiences, physical environments, race, and gender. These factors oftentimes impact each other, and when looking at food insecurity, many social determinants of health influence the ability to be food secure, but being food secure also impacts other social determinants of health. So it really can be a revolving door and difficult to overcome. Let's look at one of the more obvious social determinants of health, income. In 2021, Statistics Canada found that of the households who reported their main source of income as social assistance, such as provincial welfare or disability programs, 63.1% of these households were food insecure. This can be compared to 51.9% of food insecure households who reported their main income being from wages, salaries, and self-employment in the same year, which is still an alarmingly high number. Gender and race also influence household food insecurity. Households with single parents are more likely to be food insecure, but households led by lone female parents saw the highest percentage of food insecurity at 38%. In 2021, the Canadian Income Survey began collecting race-based data and found that Indigenous people made up the highest percentage of individuals living in food-secure households at 30.7% of the overall number of food-insecure households. The health outcomes associated with living with food insecurity are severe and potentially life-threatening. A research program out of the University of Toronto's Department of Nutritional Sciences called PROOF discusses the relationship between food insecurity and poor health outcomes. We will include their website in our show notes if you want more information. People who are unable to afford or do not have access to nutritious food, or maybe they don't have the time to prepare healthy meals, may seek less healthy but more cost-effective alternatives like fast food. Poor diet can put people at higher risk for developing diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. There is also a correlation between poor diet and weakened immune systems and mental health issues such as depression and anxiety disorders. Furthermore, food insecure individuals may have a difficult time adhering to therapeutic diets and medication treatment plans necessary for controlling chronic health issues due to the costs associated with it. A study from 2019 in the Canadian Medical Association Journal found that almost half of food insecure adults reported non-adherence to their medicinal treatments, such as reducing, skipping, or delaying treatment because they are unable to afford it. Unfortunately, this is a reality for people who are having to decide whether their income is allocated to food or other necessary treatments. Children are especially vulnerable to the impacts of food insecurity. In 2021, 1 in 5 children under the age of 18 across the 10 provinces experienced some level of food insecurity. This amounts to approximately 1.4 million children. Please listen to this short audio clip about how children are affected by malnutrition.
Malnutrition may not make headlines like a famine does, but not having the proper nutrients can be just as deadly. You see, hunger isn't just a stomach thing. It affects every part of the body, and these effects can last for a lifetime. For instance, a healthy brain uses 20% of the body's energy, and that energy comes from, you guessed it, food. When a child is hungry, the brain is starved. The result? Malnourished kids fall behind in school because they can't concentrate. Then there's the heart. A healthy heart pumps a steady supply of blood throughout the body, but the heart of a hungry child shrinks, literally, so it has to work extra hard to pump enough blood. Vital organs like the liver and kidneys filter out toxins and waste, while the immune system fends off diseases. But when a child is malnourished, dangerous toxins build up in the liver, the kidneys fail, and a weakened immune system crumbles in the face of killer diseases. Skin and bones are also affected by nutrition. Healthy skin is like armor, shielding the body from infection, and healthy bones get bigger and stronger as a child grows. But when a child is malnourished, their skin cracks, allowing infections to get in. Their bones stop growing, which is why hungry kids often end up being small for their age. So how can we help? We need to catch hunger before it starts by making sure kids aren't just getting enough food, but the right food, so that they have the best possible chance at a healthy, successful life.
That video is taken from World Vision USA, and I think it gives a good overview about how malnutrition in children affects the different body systems. These effects can be severe and cause long-term health issues. As mentioned, nutritional deficiencies can lead to anemia, bone abnormalities, and stunted growth. In 2020, the United Nations estimated that worldwide, 149.2 million children under the age of 5 suffer from stunted growth due to malnutrition. Children living in food-insecure households are not only at risk for malnutrition, but also at higher risk of obesity if they are consuming foods high in trans fats and sugars seen on most fast food menus. This risk can carry into adulthood if children aren't given the opportunity to learn about nutrition and develop healthy eating habits. The United Nations' second Sustainable Development Goal is to end world hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Unfortunately, they estimate that about 1 in 10 people worldwide still suffer from hunger, which is further aggravated by the rising cost of food prices and living in many countries. Achieving this goal continues to be a work in progress, but it is detrimental in improving health outcomes for those in Canada and across the globe.
Thanks, Taylor. There was a lot of statistics in that piece that show the connection of just how hard people are affected by food insecurity here in Canada, particularly children, Indigenous, low-income, and remote communities. When we are left hungry, it affects how we think and function day to day. Up next is Haben, who's going to briefly discuss the multitude of factors that are contributing to rising food prices and the effect that has had on many food banks and soup kitchens in our province.
With everything getting more expensive, the food prices have also increased, leading to increased food insecurity in lives of Canadians. The inflation rate is spiking at its fastest pace in almost 40 years, hitting 7.7% increase in May of 2022, according to the Statistics Canada, or Stats Canada for short, which is run by the Canadian National Statistics Office. Stats Canada's Consumer Price Index of August 2022 shows that prices for just groceries itself are rising at the fastest pace since 1981, at 10.8% higher compared to a year ago. That's almost 11% rise of grocery prices. Here, let me give you an example. So let's say something was $20 last year. Right now, exact same product would cost more than $22. With everything getting more expensive, wages have increased as well to around 5.2% on a year-over-year basis in July 2022, according to Stocks Canada Labour Force Survey. But that is not quite enough to pay for all of our living expenses that have gotten more expensive. Simply put, the wages aren't keeping up with the cost of the increasing living expenses. So, a lot of people have been tightening their belts when it comes to spending money. However, we can only do so much to save costs on food, since food is a necessity of life. Consequently, there has been increased usage of food banks. And now, we're going to listen to a short audio clip.
So today we have a rosemary and lemon chicken with salad and rice.
Containers are filled, stacked, and bagged over and over again.
Anywhere from 200 to 250 lunches per day.
That's roughly double the number served pre-pandemic, putting pressure on the Rainbow Kitchen like never before.
It's just meant an insane increase in the amount of money it takes to keep this place running.
But donations in the form of food and money are only trickling in.
36, 37.
From the food kitchen to the food bank, it's the same story.
All these shelves would normally be full with...
Since January, demand here at the Goldstream Food Bank is up by 67%, while donations are down by nearly a third.
Where we used to get 6, 7 banana boxes of food, we now get 1 or 2 banana boxes of food.
Dubose says with inflation hitting a level not seen in more than 40 years, families working hard to make ends meet are finding themselves needing a helping hand at the end of the month.
People that both have a job, but with everything being so high, they need that little boost at the end.
According to Food Banks of BC, those accessing support across its more than 100 members has hit unprecedented highs. Between December of 2021 and March of 2022, the number of new clients was up by 50%.
I'm a low-income senior and just trying to make ends meet.
And being fed for free frees me from certain financial burden.
The question now is how to keep up.
How are we going to do it? There's hardly anything on the shelf.
And while volunteers often have no choice but to work with what they've got, these hampers are still being filled.
That's all we can do.
The hope is getting the word out will help drive up supply. What comes down to food and funds.
Those are really the things that keep us going so that we can keep making the lunches that are needed in our community.
Kylie Stanton, Global News, Victoria.
So that was an audio clip from Global News Canada about soup kitchen and food banks struggling with increased demand but decreased donations in BC, focusing on a food bank called Rainbow Kitchen located in Victoria. But the other food banks in different parts of BC are seeing similar trends, according to Food Banks BC. So let's talk about the other factors that are influencing inflation of food prices. The supply of food continued to be impacted by multiple factors, including extreme weather, higher input costs to producing these foods, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and supply chain disruptions. First of all, the pandemic has negatively impacted the food supply chain. With COVID worsening the worker shortage, every level of food production is being disrupted, from when the food is produced until the moment it reaches your stomach. There are many stages, including the production of food, manufacturing, packaging, transportation, and retail. As a result, when people are sick, that means there's less people working, and then the food supply chain is disrupted, and that leads to less food being available, consequently increasing the price of food. Also, the pandemic has promoted large amounts of people to switch industries and find a new career with higher pay and job security, because jobs in the food sector typically tended to be lower paid with fewer benefits and physically demanding conditions. While the overall demand for food did not decrease, the food supply chain has reduced in size. Additionally, the Canadian government announced that starting January 15th of 2022, travelers will only be allowed to enter Canada if they're fully vaccinated, with one of the vaccines approved for entry into Canada. And this included truck drivers, meaning that unvaccinated American truck drivers have not been able to enter Canada, while Canadian truck drivers re-entering Canada from the United States must be tested and quarantine themselves. The policies have been met with rising protests and trucking strikes, leading to an increased shortage of truck drivers as well, which created another problem. Less truck drivers also mean longer delivery times, and that's not great when it comes to food because time sensitivity is a key issue, and it can lead to food waste depending on the delivery time. The RSM Canada Supply Chain Index notes that all of these factors, in addition to the floods and landslides in British Columbia, exacerbate delivery times, and as a result, would increase prices even more as businesses pass on the cost to customers. So all of these difficulties with the food supply chain is something that we need to be aware of because the consequences of it is affecting us as consumers. RSM is an organization that provides audit, tax, business, and technology consulting services to Canadian businesses. So basically, they study the market and provide economic analysis to middle market organizations. RSM explains what goes on behind the scenes of food price inflation. So if you want to learn more about that, or any of the resources that was mentioned before on the show, all of the links to the resources will be provided on our show notes, posted on our social media pages.
Thanks, Haben, for that rundown. The information presented in that segment only briefly touches on what is a very intricate, multifaceted, complex system that can be difficult to grasp for those not working within its realm. During our research, we discovered we could easily talk about Canada's food supply network for an entire season and still not cover it all. As Haben mentioned, we've included some helpful resources for those who'd like to learn a little bit more about Canada's supply chain and how external pressures can create nationwide issues. And now we're going to take a short break, and when we return, I'm going to play a short clip from Nunavut and how some local community members are banding together to create food networks to support their community.
Did you know, according to Island Food Hubs, 1 in 10 households experience food insecurity, and 1 in 6 children, or 16.6%, live in food insecure households.
According to Vancouver Island Food Hub, 13% of households in Vancouver Island is experiencing food insecurity, with Central Vancouver Island, including Nanaimo, at 14%.
Did you know that within the Island Health region, 4% of people are severely food insecure? According to Island Food Hubs, this is described as missing meals, reduced food intake, and at most extreme, going days without food.
Did you know that according to Stats Canada, Canadians paid 9.7% more for food in April than they had for April 2021? This increase, which exceeds 5% for the 5th month in a row, was the largest increase since September of 1981.
The name Iqaluit in Inuktitut means place of many fish, and it's easy to see why. Kamariet Mitsimo grew up on these waters, fishing for Arctic char, as well as clams, beluga whales, and seals. And whatever they can't eat themselves, they share with friends.
Some of them don't have any hunters in the family. Some of them are elders. We share a lot. I'm not the only one. The other hunters do that.
But that long-standing Inuit tradition of sharing the catch has fast become a lifeline for this remote northern city. Record high inflation has sent food prices soaring across the country, and nowhere more so than Canada's northernmost communities.
Iqaluit was already home to some of the most expensive food in the country, and those prices are climbing even higher. This bag of potatoes costs about $15. It's almost $22 for a kilogram of ground beef, and a 4-liter jug of milk will cost you more than $8. That's $2 more than the national average.
When I was a kid, 10 cents for a pop. Today, you could $5.25 for a pop now.
Hunters like Emilio Alnaco and his curious son Jonah are now donating their excess meat to this local food center, distributed daily to those in need. Compared to last year, demand for food donations has doubled.
Most of the food we get is flown in from south because we don't have aquaculture. It's too cold up here in the north, so we have to look for other sources.
To that end, this Inuit-owned development company recently decided to look a little deeper. Combining traditional knowledge with cutting-edge technology, they deployed this new research vessel to map the ocean floor, scouring the uncharted seabed in Nunavut's Kikitani region, looking for new inshore fishing spots.
What we saw is unbelievable.
From sea urchins and sea cucumbers to scallops and shrimp to clams and cod, species that local fishermen had seen for years in the stomachs of whales and seals, but never knew where they came from.
We were very pleasantly surprised. Even though we knew a lot of the species were there, we certainly didn't visualize or have any idea as to the quantity. This would add significantly to the diet of the various communities.
Their research continues, and these coordinates will be shared with local communities so they can be fished sustainably, in hopes of providing a new food source to meet the growing need. Jeff Semple, Global News, Iqaluit.
If you're just joining us today here on A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM, we're talking about food security in our community. So far, we've discussed the essential connection of food access to a person's holistic health and wellness, as well as a brief discussion about some of the factors leading to rising food costs. Next up, join me as I talk with Abby Sauchuk, Director of Development at Loaves and Fishes. I had the pleasure of talking to Abby about the amazing work her team is doing in our community and how Loaves and Fishes is having a very different experience when it comes to getting food in the hands of people all over Vancouver Island. Can you provide our listeners with some history about Loaves and Fishes in Nanaimo?
Yes. So we started off as a small food bank with some well-meaning people in 1996, and then became a registered organization in 1998 with the goal of providing food assistance to people in need around Nanaimo. And that's basically, small potatoes start. We then purchased a larger building down on Farquhar Street and started serving people there, and very quickly grew out of that space, and then started with our 210 Fry Street current central warehouse. So right now the warehouse we have is about 6,000 square feet, and we've actually grown out of that too.
I was just going to ask if you're now experiencing the crunch of space again. Are you, or is your organization now looking for even a larger or a second location, or are you just trying to make do with what you have?
So currently, the city of Nanaimo recently purchased property we selected on East Wellington Road for $1.3 million. And they're providing a 30-year lease to us for $10. And right now, we're working on the capital campaign to build a 25,000 square foot food security complex facility that will serve Vancouver Island.
Oh, so that's amazing. So not even just Nanaimo, we're talking now about the entirety of the island?
Well, right now we are serving Vancouver Island. We're in over 30 communities. Our food reach reaches over 30 communities across Vancouver Island. So we have 10 free market depots open in Nanaimo. We call them the free markets. They're set up to give people the dignity of the shopping experience. Those are open 7 days a week in Nanaimo, and we're also the Port Hardy Food Bank. So every other Wednesday, we take between 5,000 and 7,000 pounds of food up to Port Hardy and run a free market there. And then on the opposing Wednesdays, we take the same amount or similar up to Port McNeill, where we do a food drop to the other organizations in Indigenous communities so that they can have free food for their meal programs. We do all of this free of charge. We deliver weekly to Ladysmith and Chemainus, and we're spreading our reach out. We have over 100 other Indigenous communities, nonprofit partners, schools, and other food banks across Vancouver Island who access food free of charge from us, either through our central warehouse or by delivery. So that's what we're doing right now with the space we have. The goal is with 25,000 square feet, there is no reason someone needs to go hungry on Vancouver Island. That's the goal.
That is absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad to hear that. So with this capital project, what is it that you're looking for now? So the community, do you have like fundraisers or drives, or how can the community support you in that?
Well, currently we're going to the government to ask if they would fund the building of the facility. And then once that gets off the ground, then you're going to hear a lot more fundraising for things like pallet racking and pallet jacks and bins, and there's quite a lot that goes in to a warehouse facility. And right now we're doing between 200,000 and 300,000 pounds of food per month rotating through our warehouse. So in order to basically keep that infrastructure going, it needs pretty large investments.
So in 2012, you launched your organization launched the Food for You food recovery program. Can you explain to our listeners what that program is and what it does?
Absolutely. So that's the majority of where our food comes from. I don't know how well known it is. It's getting more well known that over half the food produced in Canada is lost or wasted. But at the same time, we have a food insecurity problem while we're throwing out all this food. So what the Food for You recovery program is the idea that you go and you collect everything the grocery stores are throwing away. About 85% of the food we collect from our grocery partners is perfectly good to eat. There's nothing wrong with it. So while we have this issue with food going to waste and people going hungry, we're the stopgap of a total waste solution for the grocery stores. This month, actually, we've hit 30 grocery partners across Vancouver Island. So we have 30 grocery stores, many of which we're collecting from 7 days a week, 364 days a year, and we take everything they're throwing out. It makes us easy to work with. The grocery stores like it because we're saving them dumping fees, and we like it because it provides significantly more food for people, especially healthy, fresh food. We bring it back to the central warehouse. It's sorted, edible from inedible for human consumption. The edible food goes to people via the free markets that we spoke about. And also the edible food goes to the over 100 other nonprofit partners across Vancouver Island. Again, completely free of charge. And the food that's not fit for people is made available to farmers for free for their livestock and compost. And then the last step is we have partnerships with industrial compost facilities to compost the rest of it. The idea is to make a circular food system that puts food to its highest and best use. So we're diverting waste, but also feeding people and helping farmers.
That is absolutely amazing. And just the idea that like we're saving so much just going to landfill that doesn't need to be there. Mm-hmm. Do you find for the food that is not fit for human consumption, are you finding that farmers are actually taking advantage of having that food for their livestock?
Yes, quite a few. We have some large pig farms, which we really appreciate because they come with flatbed trucks and take it by the mega bag load. And they feed their pigs that way. The feedback we get from farmers, in a lot of cases, it's a difference between a profit and a loss for them because they're not buying animal food. So it is a huge help to the farmers as well, which then in turn goes back into the economy. So the idea is that circular food system that is good for the environment as well. I mean, if decomposing food waste were a country, it'd be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter in the world.
Wow. I had no idea. And then so your entire program. Like, this is quite amazing. So not only are we supporting some of the most vulnerable people in our community, like you said, especially in Canada, no one should be going hungry, but yet so many people do. But we're also supporting our local farmers. Like you said, that could save them from a loss, which could cause huge economic loss for them. And then do you have the other portion of composting as well? So again, that food is not hitting waste. It's actually being used as compost. Do you find that you work really well with them? Like, they're available, they come and take this stuff for you?
They're fantastic. We deliver it. So we bring it to them, but they donate a certain amount of compost fees to us every month to save us on the compost. The interesting thing about food recovery is you hear a lot of the narrative with food banks that we don't have enough food, there's a shortage of food. We actually at Loaves and Fishes have an abundance problem, not an issue with not having enough food. We need people to take it. So for one of the many reasons why food recovery is so great is we are very low barrier. We don't check people's incomes or addresses. All they need is one piece of government issued ID for every person in their household and their own bags. And we encourage them to come 7 days a week. In Nanaimo, we're open 7 days a week, Port Hardy every other week. And we want people coming every day we're open to take this food away. Because if you don't take it away, we have to figure out where to get rid of it. It's a fascinating idea that there's enough food to give. There's enough for everyone. And we encourage people to come. Don't go into debt for food. Don't put it on your credit card. We're here and we've got plenty and we want you to take it. The investment that's our pinch is we need the money for the infrastructure. We have a fleet of 5-ton refrigerated trucks. We have large walk-in freezers, walk-in refrigerators. We have drivers driving over 5,000 kilometers a month around Vancouver Island, delivering this food completely free to other communities. And to keep that free and to keep that food flowing through, we need infrastructure investment.
Fair enough. And that actually, I was going to ask the question about accessing your services. So when we talk about low barriers, so really it's just that piece of ID. Do you find like there's a common misconception that people cannot access your services unless they literally don't have food versus like, say, families who may, have some income coming in, but food is very tight, or they're having to make a choice between bills and food or housing and food?
I think the hard thing for people is fighting the stigma,
That's kind of where I was going to go.
To put it crudely, we hear a lot of, and maybe I'm not poor enough. Does that make sense? We say things like, if you come to the food bank so that you can afford for your kid to play sports or go to camp, go for it. We'd rather people come when they're needing it as opposed to when they're desperately needing it. The idea is prevention. So that's another reason why we're very low barrier, is we don't want you to wait till you're in dire straits to come get the help. If you're coming to get food so that you can maybe have an emergency fund or some savings, or be able to get a better vehicle so that you can, have your work truck in better shape. Those are the kind of reasons we think people should come to a food bank, because we don't want people waiting until they're in a really bad way. It's a lot harder to climb out of poverty than it is to stay out of it. So that's sort of our philosophy here. And because of food recovery, you're actually helping the planet by coming and taking the food.
And like you said, you have quite that abundance right now too. So people don't need to be suffering to access your services. Like, they don't have to be that idea of, I have to be at absolute rock bottom with nothing left. That shouldn't be a necessity to get food. And I really appreciate what our listeners are receiving from this, that they don't have to feel stigmatized to come see you. And I imagine you see people from all walks of life and all ages and population groups.
Yeah, and we have some people, they'll maybe use us temporarily for 6 months while they're paying off a car payment or something, and then they're better off for it and they're okay and they don't need to come again. And then we have some people who need to come all the time because they've got kids to feed or they're on disability, and all walks. And I think the other important thing we do is we allow something called third-party pickup. So if you can't make it, or somebody who isn't gonna come, you can come and collect for them. So the idea of the sharing. I mean, we have one lady who sends us awesome pictures on DMs of stuff she's cooked. She has elderly neighbors on either side of her who are struggling, and she cooks them dinner every night. So she makes a big dinner every night and she brings it to each of them. Now, she doesn't personally need our services. She has a good job, but she can't afford to feed 2 other elderly couples every day. So she comes to the food bank as a client, takes that food, cooks it, and then provides it for them. And we hear stories like that all the time. The idea of the sharing, and that can only happen when you're low barrier, and it helps to fill the gap for people who can't make it here.
That's absolutely an amazing story and a heartfelt story. Just listening to that. I love that idea of like really community building. And that's where you're a central foundation for when it comes to community building within not just here in Nanaimo, but everywhere on the island. Hi, everyone. We're just going to pause the interview for a quick moment and take a short break. We'll be right back.
According to Statistics Canada, in 2020, 1 in 10 families were unable to afford the food that they needed.
Here's a quick statistic demonstrating how Canada is working to reduce food insecurity. In March 2021, over 2,300 food banks Canada-wide reported 1.3 million visits and provided 3.2 million meals and snacks to those in need. According to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal Report, conflict, COVID-19, climate change, and growing inequities are converging to undermine food security worldwide. About 1 in 10 people worldwide are suffering from hunger, and nearly 1 in 3 people lack regular access to adequate food.
According to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Report 2022, the Ukraine crisis triggered food shortages for the world's poorest people because Ukraine and the Russian Federation supply 30% of wheat, 20% of maize, and 80% of sunflower seed products globally.
Thanks for tuning in to CHLY 101.7 FM. This is the Sound Constitution, and if you are just joining us, we're talking with Abby Sauchuk from Loaves and Fishes about her organization's work in our community. Now, a return to our interview. So when people come to access you, and you talked about like there's an opportunity just to take that stigma away to them to have more of a shopping experience, are there limitations about how much food they can take or what types of food they can have with each visit?
So it's dependent on the size of your household or group. We use group or household instead of family to sort of encompass the diversity of what a family looks like for people. And also, if you don't have a home, you're still welcome, right? Maybe you're in a group, but you're home, experiencing homelessness, or you're housing insecure, so you're on someone's couch. Also, we've got people who are raising their nieces and nephews, or they're unofficially their neighbor's kid is living with them because that's how they're, able to look after them. So that's why it's only just ID and not an address check. So what they can do is the size of your household or group is dependent on how much you can take that day. So every 2 weeks is your full hamper, which is your meat, your canned goods, your pasta sauce. Again, it's the access to that. So you can choose it. If you don't like pasta, you don't have to take pasta. You can take something else. So that's every 2 weeks that you get the full access to the full hamper. But every day you can keep going back for fruit, vegetables, and bread, or anything fresh. So that helps also to, if you're getting all your fresh vegetables and your fresh fruit and your bread, then that's also freeing up money for you to buy other things you would need that's not that.
And with Loaves and Fishes, is it just food, or is there like personal hygiene items? Do you ever get people donating those type of things?
Yeah, we take those and we sort of have them at the end of the market, pick that up on your way out. Mostly though, it's food, and food is what we do best. And, we have a lot of people asking, like, do you guys have a nutrition program? Do you teach cooking classes or gardening? And there are a lot of really wonderful organizations in our community that are doing a great job, and we don't want to be redundant. What we're really good at is collecting tons of food, sorting it, and then pushing it back out again. And that is our primary focus. That's what we do. We don't need to step on any toes. The way we support other initiatives is we provide free food 5 days a week to those organizations so that they can take the money that they saved on food and divert it to what they do best.
And again, that like community building and being that foundational pillar of building up not only individuals, but other community organizations, like you said, so they can go out and do the good work that they're doing, which is just amazing. The other question I had asked of me too was about pet food. If you ever have opportunities with that, or do you know where someone can access that?
Yeah, no, that's great. We do pet food, yes. We do food recovery for pet food too, and we have a couple local pet stores that do pet food is sort of on when we have it basis, but that is a category people can access if we have it available.
As a beloved cat owner, so I love that. There's also for people who may be struggling with feeding our pets good food, having also knowing like, yeah, there is a resource that is out there that may be available to you as well to take a look into. The next question I have is, what is the Hamper to Your Home program? I saw that label.
So that is for people who are medically unable to leave the house. So it's a once a month grocery delivery program we run. And usually it's for people who've just gotten out of the hospital or recovering from surgeries or things like that. It's a limited monthly delivery program for people with medical issues where they can't come to a depot. We do encourage, though, more people like give your ID to someone else, because you will get you don't get to choose if it's hampered your home, right? You have what we have available that month. But if you come, which is, I mean, it's great. People love it. We have lots of people who sign up for it. But part of the other thing we did to be more accessible, it was a COVID invention that we kept, is we have a drive-through. So one of our free market depots in our original building we still have on Farquhar Street is a drive-through option. So if you can't walk or stand for long periods of time, you line up at the drive-through and you pull up, and they lay all the food out on the table, and you can have some choice at the window, like I like orange cheese, not white cheese, and you sort that out, and then they load it in your trunk for you and you drive away. People loved that so much during COVID. We actually held on to it. Just, backed by popular demand, we have that drive-through option, which has helped a lot of hamper to your home people who can't stand or carry things to the bus. If they can get a ride, some people, they'll fill the van with their client friends and they all ride together and load up. And it's, again, building community.
To keep the drive-through is a great benefit, like you said, for those who are coming through. But do you also find is it like easier on you guys as well? Or does it allow people to go and access services like quicker so you can get more people helped in a day?
Mm-hmm. The drive-through is quite efficient, but our shopping model is actually quite efficient too.
Okay.
Because you're walking down the line, picking what you want and loading it into your bag. So we actually found, we're all about efficiency at Loaves and Fishes. We have to be, because we can't go to our grocery partners. I mean, like I said, there's 30 of them. We can't go to them and say, you know what, our fridge is full, so we're just not going to pick up this week. It'll have to pile up in your loading bay. There is no option to not go. So we have to be a food pipe, not a food bank, which again goes back to why we need a larger facility. We don't have the capacity to hold the food. It has to just get pumped out. And so we've had to develop these efficiencies right from the collection at the grocery store straight through to the warehouse and then right out to the people. Needs to be very streamlined and efficient, because we cannot have backlogs of food piled up. So it's in a way, it's just forced us to continuously innovate as we grow. And it's easier on the volunteers. You need a lot fewer volunteers in a market setup, because you don't have people preloading hampers and just handing people a box of stuff that half of it they might not even want. So it's not only more dignified to allow people to shop, it's a lot more efficient as well.
How has Loaves and Fishes seen change since COVID? And we've talked a little bit like that, like you introduced this new drive-through, but we're facing increasing inflation. We're still feeling the effects of our pipelines for distribution. Are you finding more people have access to your services? Have you seen any change in, say, donations or like income and support for your organization?
So our signups are up 30% as compared to last year. During COVID, we actually, interestingly enough, we had, I said we have an abundance. The abundance grew. So at the beginning of COVID, we had a drop in what we were collecting from the grocery stores, which, because of people collecting more at the grocery stores and, trying to, basically the panic. I don't know if everybody remembers that in early 2020. we had to have a serious meeting. Like, we need to keep the food flowing. And so what we did is we started accessing food that was supposed to go to restaurants that were closed. Like, where can we find a pile of food that's just sitting that needs to be collected? And the food for restaurants had to go somewhere. So with our regional and national partnerships, Foodbanks BC, Foodbanks Canada, Second Harvest, we went and we started getting the food, diverting the food that was coming to Nanaimo to go to these closed restaurants. And instead it was coming here. At one point, we were processing 9,000 dozen eggs a week through this warehouse, which is what actually pushed our big expansion to serve across Vancouver Island, was because we had to get these things out because the next 9,000 dozen eggs were coming and we couldn't hold it. And so that's just an example of, just innovate. And the food is out there. It's all across Canada. Places are paying huge dumping fees on perfectly good food. So if you can get in there and convince them that you'll save them time and money and you'll do something good for people, it's kind of an easy sell to start collecting food that they're just going to throw out anyway. And the eggs were perfectly fine. They were lovely, fresh eggs. And they went everywhere. Ucluelet, Port New Meal. It was great.
Wow. This has actually been such an amazing conversation because I think we saw so much loss and devastation and, companies shutting down and people were out of work. So the thought that everyone was losing and everyone was suffering for that. And then to find out that Loaves and Fishes was like, you had this foundational community pillar of if you're on hard times, we're here. We got you. We're able to support you because we have so much extra here. We can be there for you. That is amazing. And again, I think a lot of that is the stigma of, I can't use food banks unless I'm at my absolute worst. When in reality, it's no, the food banks are there for all of us just to help out when we need it. I'm totally amazed and impressed.
It was great. At one point, we were like, you need to take a second chicken. If you want one chicken, we need you to take a second chicken. You need to, we were put, it was hilarious. Some of them, it's a good story. I think we're one of the few happy stories that came out of the pandemic is we learned how to streamline better. We spread across Vancouver Island. And like I said, it was a great feeling for telling people, are you sure you don't have enough freezer space for one more? And they were like, I can't believe it. It's you're not holding back on us. You're pushing food on us. And it was a beautiful feeling. And that's how we are here. We just, if there's a need, we'll fill it and we'll find a way, just have to get creative.
Do food banks communicate with each other? And do you have any idea of how you guys have compared to, say, other food banks, either in the province or in the country?
Well, Food Banks Canada asked us to do the manual on how to run a food recovery program. And so we do have food banks, mostly from across BC, sometimes farther. They come here and they book, a couple of days of our time, and we've taught them how to run a program like ours. But the biggest shift in thinking is telling your donors, we're not going to take your money and buy food. We're going to put it into truck fuel or wages for a 5-ton truck driver to go and collect this. But we're going to collect mountains of food that already exists. And we're going to use your money to do that, as opposed to purchasing it. And the way that we run our program is for every $1 donation, we provide over $5 worth of food, simply by investing in infrastructure to go collect food that already exists.
I think that's a really important way to approach that as well. This is actually where your money goes. So my last question for you is, how can community members get involved? I know sometimes I see where you can drop off your empties for the Loaves and Fishes, the boxes everywhere. So what ways can we volunteer? Can we financially support? What would you like the public to know?
Well, it's really easy to donate online. We have a very streamlined online donor portal where you can get an automatic tax receipt emailed to you. We're always looking for funds. Also, volunteering is, really great, especially with empty sorting, that donating empties. So that empties program since 2020 has made us over $500,000. And that's just in people donating their unwanted recycling to bins. But we really lean heavily on volunteers to sort those because we're paid by the sorted mega bag by regional recycling. So, and we also, like I said, most of the sorting of the food from the edible to the inedible is done by our team. We've got about 200 volunteers a month on a rotation sorting this food. And, the more, the better to come and sort. And, it's a great environment, lots of chit-chatting while you sort food and get it out to the markets.
If someone wanted to volunteer, how could they best reach out, and who do they reach out to?
So they just go on our website under volunteering, and there's a sign-up process. And then they do a volunteer orientation, and we see where they, how much time they can dedicate and where they'll fit the best, and we go from there.
Perfect. And that was Abby Sauchuk with Loaves and Fishes. Unfortunately, the tail end of our Zoom interview got cut off as we were saying our goodbyes, but we hope our listeners enjoyed the interview. For those who would like more information about volunteering, donating, or accessing Loaves and Fishes, you can find all that information on their website at nanaimo-loavesandfishes.org, or you can give them a call at 250-754-8347, or send them an email through their contact page on their website. We will have all this information in our show notes on our social media pages. Our last segment today is Cam, and she's going to share information about what resources are available right away if you are facing food insecurity. Part of this segment was recorded prior to our interview, so you may notice a refresher of information regarding Loaves and Fishes that Abby talked about.
Thanks so much, Jenna. I'm excited to share about the various resources in our community that are working towards decreasing food insecurity. So first up, I want to talk about the Nanaimo Foodshare Society. Nanaimo Foodshare Society is a charitable organization that has been up and running since 2000. Through multiple programs, Nanaimo Foodshare Society provides the community with the necessary skills and support to help increase access to healthy food, as well as decrease food insecurity. Nanaimo Foodshare connects with multiple community partners to address food insecurity and increase community access to healthy foods. One of their successful programs is the BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program. Through this program, participants are given a $21 coupon each week to be used at the Island Roots Market. According to Nanaimo Foodshare Society, the BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program generated a $53,760 benefit for the community and provided $25,872 worth of coupons. Now that's a huge contribution to decreasing food insecurity in our community. Nanaimo Foodshare also provides multiple programs for young children to older adults that aim to provide education about healthy eating. One program that encompasses all members of our community is the Good Food Box program. Everyone, no matter their income or food security, is able to purchase a box of fresh fruits or vegetables for the price of $5, $10, or $15. According to the Nanaimo Foodshare Society's annual report of 2020 to 2021, 500,000 pounds of produce were packed into over 27,000 good food boxes. Now, if you are in need of food or would like to volunteer at Nanaimo Foodshare or even donate to help our community by increasing food security, head over to nanaimofoodshare.ca for more information. Another great resource in our community is the Loaves and Fishes. According to their website, in 2021, Loaves and Fishes, quote, sourced and distributed $6,500,000 worth of food. The Loaves and Fishes focus on food recovery through their program, Food for You Food Recovery. Through this program, Loaves and Fishes partners with local grocery retailers to collect the surplus of food that they may have thrown out otherwise. The volunteers at Loaves and Fishes work to sort through the food and choose high-quality items to provide for people in need. Any food that is not to standard is donated to local farmers to feed their animals or to provide compost. This program not only helps to decrease food insecurity, but also helps to reduce waste in an environmentally friendly way. Loaves and Fishes do not check your income or address, and you are welcome to collect a regular hamper of non-perishable and fresh food every 2 weeks, or the Food for You hamper is available 7 days a week. Also, be sure to keep an eye out around Nanaimo and surrounding areas for the Loaves and Fishes Empties for Food bins, where you can donate your empty drink containers to support the Loaves and Fishes in providing Nanaimo people and families with increased access to food. So, how about our most vulnerable community members, our children and youth? Well, the Nanaimo Ladysmith Schools Foundation has launched a Food for Schools initiative that provides vulnerable students with healthy meals for breakfast and lunch. Through this initiative, 1,200 students at 33 different schools are provided with healthy food on a daily basis. You can visit nlsf.ca/food-for-schools to donate. If you are in need of food, head over to Foodbanks BC. Foodbanks BC is the provincial association of food banks and provides food banks across BC with financial donations and resources. On the Foodbanks BC website, you will see a Find a Food Bank option. Fill in your postal code or city, and food banks nearest you will be generated. All of these programs are helping to increase food security and provide members of our community with healthy and nutritious food through various methods. You can check out our show notes on our social media for links to each resource discussed if you would like further information.
And with that, I'm wrapping up today's episode. I'd like to thank Abby Sauchuk from Nanaimo's Loaves and Fishes Foodbank for joining me today to talk about the organization and its important work in Nanaimo. Thanks to my co-host for joining me today to talk about food security and how it affects our entire well-being, as well as all the ways people are facing ever-increasing costs to access food, as well as what resources we have to help ensure everyone has access to healthy food. For details and show notes from today's episode, or to follow along on what's coming up this season, check out our Facebook page at A Sound Constitution. We also have Instagram at CHLY A Sound Constitution, all one word, or our Twitter at ASC_VIU. If you've missed parts of this episode, or you would like to listen to this episode or any of our other episodes from past shows, check out our YouTube channel at A Sound Constitution. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.